Tanks make or break the group. A good tank who knows what he or she is doing can make the run very smooth and enjoyable. A tank with no clue about what's going on make things very slow, tedious and boring, and costly once your gear starts breaking. That's why we will go over the 10 more important parts which will make you a proper tank. This guide will be oriented around druid and warrior tanking and will be a mix between basic and intermediate theory along with some tips and tricks. Paladins can also tank dungeons quite well, but they do however work somewhat different compared to druid or warriors. Anyways, let's get started. Lead the group. Ideally, you should know the way, and ideally, you're always running first. If you run into a patrol, you should be the one taking the hits. You should run first, show the way, call out the breaks, put the marks for kills. You should lead your group. Number 2. Control the fight. Decide where you fight the mobs. Humanoids tend to run away, so don't stand too close to other mobs. Some mobs call for help, you might want to keep those away. Beasts often enrage at low HP, so try and not have several enraged beasts at you at once. Utilize marks for kill orders. Generally, you want to kill anything that mana burns or heals first. If everyone focuses on the same target, you will also have an easier time holding aggro. It might be a good idea to make a macro which marks your target with a skull. I'll have it in the description. You should choose what to fight and where to fight it. You should control the fight. Number 3. Keep aggro or don't. The idea of a tank is having one person specializing in taking as little damage as possible via high armor, wearing a shield, focusing on dodge and parry and using certain abilities, and so on and so forth. That person should take all the hits, minimalizing the amount of damage the group takes. However, all the things that I mentioned, armor, dodge, parry and so forth, they reduce physical damage taken. Once you face a caster, those things won't affect how much damage you receive. In a situation like that, you might want to switch from a one-hand and a shield to a two-hander in order to kill it quicker. It is also not as important to keep the enemy caster of the other group members, as they will deal the same amount of damage to everyone. Now, if you pull too many, perhaps a pet can tank one of the mobs or another DPS can tank it. The group's collective health is bigger than your health pool as a tank. It's better if everyone survives with 20% health than if you die followed by a full wipe. However, keep things off the healer, so she or he can focus on healing. Most of the times, you want to keep the aggro off the group, and sometimes you don't. Number 4. Manage rage. For druids and warriors, rage is your resource. Without it, you can't do much. Usually, it should be spent on abilities which do the most threat, meaning maul or sunder armor. If you find yourself not losing aggro, then maybe you could start using it for dealing damage, using cleave or heroic strike. Now maul both deals damage and deals threat. Try and save some rage for the next fight, at least enough for one maul or one sunder armor. If you're waiting on a mana break to end, use your abilities to maintain aggro and keep yourself in combat during the break. Another way is to taunt a critter to keep yourself in combat and keeping your rage from decaying. Now, did you know, by the way, that a warrior's battle shout does a certain amount of threat against enemy mobs for each ally you buff with it, making it useful for getting aggro on casters out of your rage. Spamming it and getting out of line of sight of the enemy will force the caster to come to you. To sum this up, avoid getting rage starved. Manage your rage. Number 5. Utilize your surroundings. Casters can't shoot you through walls. This can be utilized a lot. If the surroundings are in your favor, You can run in and out of sight each time the caster is about to shoot at you, making them interrupt their cast and running into your line of sight again. With some practice, you can tank casters without taking any damage at all. You can also use this to lure casters away. Sometimes you can find a clever shortcut which saves you time, or you realize that you can pull a boss from a certain position and skip a lot of trash. Be careful when taking shortcuts, however. Sometimes they result in a wipe. You should look for creative solutions. You should utilize your surroundings. Number 6. Make things happen. As a tank, you should be pulling the mobs. Keep an eye on your healer's mana, but besides that, make things happen. Pull mobs, keep moving. Don't stand around doing nothing more than you have to. It just makes the run slow. Ideally, when the first mob is about to die, you pull the second one. Depending on your group composition, the ideal number to fight at once varies. If you have several warlocks, which can dot up several targets, perhaps you should have 3 aggroed at a time. If your DPSers are better at single targets, then you pull a fewer at a time. Ideally, the tank is the one forming the group. Tanks seem to be the most rare, and rather quickly will you find the healer, and instantly will you find the damage dealers. When it comes to what level you can demand, there is often a considered minimum useful level for a dungeon. For example, level 18 for Wailing Caverns. If you invite someone much higher level than you will receive less experience. Quite a lot even. Ideally, the ones you invite are no more than 2 levels above or below you. When spamming the chats looking for more people, don't demand higher levels than your own. It's a dick move. Once inside the dungeon, don't just stare at packs of mobs, allowing time to pass. You lose experience, you lose progress. Do, however, of course, keep an eye on the mala of your group. But avoid just standing still. Make things happen. Number 7. Make proper use of TAUNT. Using TAUNT properly can save you a lot of rage. Charge the mob, auto-attack it, wait until someone pulls aggro and quickly taunt it, and if possible repeat. But you might need to throw in a maul or a sunder. Don't just use the taunt the first thing you do. It's a valuable spell. Don't waste it. Make proper use of taunt. Number 8. Gear. Generally, you want stamina and armor on your gear. However, agility is also useful, and strength of course. A one-hander and a shield for warriors, and a nice two-hander for feral tanks. Weapons sometimes have an interesting chance on hit effect. A good example would be the Mace of Antusul, which is an ideal tanking weapon. Tanks need tanking gear and damage dealers need damage dealing gear. Sometimes those two things are the same. Then both of you need. Otherwise, you should let the damage dealer have prio on damage dealing gear, and they should in turn not need on your tanking gear. And of course don't touch the intellect gear, or at least ask before. Number 9. Talents. It's not always obvious where you wanna put your talent points in order to be an effective tank. If you use a shield as a warrior, you should be fine when it comes to surviving. The safe bet is to go protection, of course. However, it might not be the most effective. I'm going for something like this myself. And parry is great, by the way. Each time you parry, your next attack will come faster. This talent allows you to switch stances, making use of abilities not usable in defensive stance, such as charge. I often head over to the talent calculator on Classic Database, and I plan a talent route for myself. It's not always obvious what you wanna pick, and you of course have the freedom to spend your points on the talents you wish. Generally, you're looking for cost reduction on often used abilities, stronger buffs, stronger debuffs, and so on and forth. If you really want to, you can look up guides on how you should spend your points, but I think it's more fun just looking over your choices on the talent calculator and decide on a build you think looks promising. Number 10. Weapons. Look for both tanking weapons and damage weapon, and make a macro to shift between them. Some weapons have chance on hit effects, of which some are particularly good for tanking. Some people recommend fast weapons for tanking. The idea behind that is that you can spam Heroic Strike as a rage dump for maximizing threats. You won't have rage to rage dump when leveling, so preferably go for the weapon with the highest damage per second, as that will translate into more damage done and more rage. If the weapon has a special chance on hit effect, which is good for tanking, then consider that as well when choosing your weapons. Looking at the consumables, there are some useful ones to look out for, such as sharpening stones, bandages, and healing potions. They can save your life from time to time. If you want to be a real MVP, you keep some sharpening stones in your bag and share them with other damage dealers who lack weapon enchants. Do note that the shaman weapon totems won't work with other weapon enhancements, such as poisons or sharpening stones. As dungeon leveling is quite efficient, you might want to consider it when leveling up an alt, especially if the alt can tank. Everyone loves a good tank, and you can quickly find new friends if you are one. Unlike healers, and especially damage dealers, you can form or find a group in just a few minutes if you decide to tank, regardless of your level. These were my 10 more important tips for how to be a proper tank. I realize there is a lot more to say, and there will probably come another videos on this topic soon. There will also be videos about how to be a proper healer and how to be a proper damage dealer. I hope you found this interesting. Like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more.